The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.
Happy Holy Day, Morris, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are an awakening center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, a learning experience for all ages. Tonight, our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, and I are pleased to present contemporary U.S. socio-geopolitical civil war schism ops. But before we begin, please be sure to like and share. And if you have not already done so, and I can't imagine that you haven't, but if you haven't, subscribe to our channel. Islam, everyone.
Islam.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Listen, first of all, Grand Sheik, I am happy to be able to be here.
Oh, yes.
It's been a week of
I'm
being
glad you feel better.
under the weather, y'all. But some of y'all probably
They've been putting stuff in the air. Them chemtrails. You noticed them the other day? They were heavy.
I've been in the house. But I will be.
And they use a storm to cover them up.
Well, I'll still be using, and I think you might need some too, some tissues and so forth, y'all. I think
as soon as I came in,
I think I'm non-toxic.
As soon as I came in, I think it's something in the house because as soon as I came in, I started sniffing.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Wow. Well, then maybe it's me, y'all. But I was under for at least a week, so I feel better. But but hopefully, we're not sending anything to you. I'm gonna stay over here.
No, I'm not.
Get over there. So y'all, yeah. So listen, it was so much emphasis that's being placed on this looming civil war. They got the Leave the World Behind, the Civil War movie, all of that other crap that we get in MSM. We decided that we were going to take a look into what's really behind. I'd say the ruse. It's a ruse. It's a sham, really, intended to incite fear, basically, in the ignorant masses.
To traumatize a psychic attack.
Yeah, fear, chaos, and ultimate destruction. Yes. But we know that what time it is for real, y'all. I gotta put my glasses on because I can't see what you are putting in there. But we still wanted to talk about it because even lately, though we tried to stay away from the political scene and making
you can't because they don't stay away from you,
right? You can't really stay away from it. So if any of y'all have been not listening but hearing, sometimes you hear things when you're not listening or you're not trying to look for it, but it finds you, and so it finds your ears, and so you can't help
because it's directed at you.
Yeah, or it finds your eyes because maybe you turn on now we used to think that the best place to get the truth was to turn on maybe like some of these social media channels and to listen to them because at least people get a chance to tell the truth. But we find out that but I'm saying that's what we used to think. We used to think, well, leave that MSM stuff alone and just stick to the off the beaten path because you'll get the truthers are on on these other channels. They're on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and whatever else, Rumble and whatever the like. But we're finding that the MSM folks have infiltrated even that, and so you get bombarded with.
So they, remember what you recognize. They make also and have been making alternate domains in order to infiltrate the so-called alternative media to create confusion too, by appearing credible, and actually putting out misinformation.
Yeah, so you say you don't want to, you don't want to. I know I say I don't want to get involved in that stuff. I don't want to hear it. I don't
Not
want
wanting to is
yeah.
part of the training too, because remember, when you look at their strategies of controlling the people, one of the things that they've always promoted is for us to dismiss it and not get involved, when it's really a distraction, when it's actually directed at us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And and this is one of the unfortunate things, Dr. G, is because we don't want to indulge in negative thinking. A lot of times people don't look at the political venues. But what is dangerous about that is that the political venues are and have been put in place actually to steal your birthright and to create the disorders and the economic traumas that we experience every day, that we have the tendency, because of that state of mind, to think is separate from us. And not paying attention, it actually made us easier victims.
Right. And now, so the reason why I chose the visual on that I did on today's for today's presentation, and you see it's it's us. Two different situations where it looks like a man and a woman are at odds with each other. When we're at a time when we really should be banding together and strengthening the bond, the familiar bond, if you will, or the
natural bond.
The natural bond.
It's an attack on nature,
right?
And this is what we need to recognize,
right? So those
really attack on nature.
Yeah. So with that being said, what struck me over the past week or so, even though I was under the weather, so I'm looking at YouTube and all this stuff, and so everything's popping up about who's for who, and what I even got an invitation from a friend of mine. I didn't know what it was, a sister friend, somebody I've known, actually been friends with, was my first really great friend for an elementary school, and sent me a text to get on a call. And I didn't know what the call was about. I didn't get on the call, but come to find out, the call was about banning, as they say, Black women. It was some kind of call supposedly for Black, quote unquote, Black women, but it really was a rallying call for, Kamala, what I mean? Kamala's, her, bid for this, this thing. And so I didn't get on the call, but then I found out later on that that's what it was about. And then ever since then, we've been getting they're pushing the narrative of men, our men being supportive of one faction, while the women who are in larger number
already, that's all.
But this is, that's what I'm saying. This is being the ones that are supporting, her, and it struck me as it's getting so ugly. We've been hearing all this stuff about civil wars, and we think that the enemy of the civil war is going to be some stranger who's going to come from out of left field because you might have more food in your house, the more provisions and stuff, and that you got to
looking at your neighbor,
hide your stuff. That's the
they're building that.
That's up. The build up. When all along what they're doing is sleight of hand. They're putting you and the guy against each other. They're pitting us, and I mean not us literally.
When we say us or you, we're talking to the audience,
right? Us together, and I'm like, Grand Sheik, I'm like, that's the real civil war. That's not the, it's not, what we think, yeah, you showing guns and devastation and people saying, what kind of American are you? And then, we said, I'm an American. So one of the things says, I'm an American. And he goes, what kind of American are you?
Yeah.
Type stuff. And it like, I'm going to be I'm just going to be, it ain't even that. Right. It's not that, y'all. And what they're doing is pitting us.
They're
Us against each other. I mean, sometimes, we hear, sometimes you and I hear, we seem like we got a little civil war going on. But I know, I mean, seemingly.
Because we're on, because we talk, honestly.
Yeah.
And we try to make or share a position to change a position. Doesn't mean, that means we're having honest conversation.
Yes.
Do this favor for me.
What's that?
This is a poem I wrote the year my mother passed.
Okay.
And let me go wipe my nose just for a minute.
Oh, you want me to read this while you? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this actually is in let me see if y'all can see that. The booklet that Grand Sheik put together called Confused About Taxes. And no, I don't have copies of it, y'all, because you're gonna try to say, can I get it? But in this, I lost the page. Okay, he the poem is called The Yoke. Who declared false as devout, though ruthless cruel the test, and weaves of inveracity buried truths and hidden facts, ill-bred yokes to foul the purer, that Romans triumphed in the West, feeding greed's capacity, wound the widow's unjust tax, that prospered life should not endure, but then the sun came out. That's deep, y'all. He writes deep. Taj Tarik Bey, penned on July 4th, 1982 AD.
Yep, that's when my mother passed, and that's her solar return.
Oh, so she came in and went out on the same
on that day.
4th of July. The Yoke. And you share this to make a point, I'm sure.
Yes, to make a point, because it's apropos for the time.
Okay.
And the other thing that I want to mention is, and these are just points of reference, and these are from lessons from 90, 92, 93, roundtable lessons. And this is, we're not getting into this, but I want those of you who have been, because most of the time Dr. G reads the chat. I don't, because I'm usually doing something else, right? But I looked at a few things while I was working at home, and I want to send some things out for people to do some research. And it became apropos, how can we help our people who are active? Because remember, many of our people aren't active. They may listen, but they're not really active. But understanding what things they're doing now because of the bond system. Because remember what's going on right now, by like we've been telling the people for the last like 7 or 8 years over the house in here, that the feedback loop. And when just before Trump came in, and then when he came in, and I told you that when I looked at him, you could tell that he was assigned. And of course, a lot of people thought that was a signal that I was supporting Trump. No, I saw that that he was like sort of like what you call a trip, a kind of like a trip in a mechanical thing from that perspective. And like I said,
how about like a glitch? Like I call myself, I'm the glitch in the matrix.
Yes.
So he's that glitch.
He didn't fit the mold.
Right.
And I could kind of foretell that he was going to be a problem for them. And then when he did that executive order, it really, because then
which executive order?
In 2017 about the child traffickers.
Oh, okay.
The traders in general. And because he made those statements, I already knew from a principled position that was going to be a problem for him, even though I understood that he was also part of the system, because he couldn't get there without being a part of the system. That's number one. However, when you're looking at the geopolitics, you know when they've kind of what you call stepped over the line.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he did says this. All right, what's he trying to do? Get himself eliminated? Then, because now that in my mind, right?
Yeah.
All right, now, and then you look at different other things that he might say that might temper that, and I didn't see that. So I started thinking, I wasn't trusting the position. And remember about 4 years ago when I said over there, and I mentioned that they were going to make Biden look lunchy so that then you would be forced to accept Trump. But it's a trap. I think I did it a few years ago when I did the thing on the preachers, the politicians, and stuff like that. Well, some old videos we did. But I'm just telling you what I was seeing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And which is another reason why, as we were talking, that when I came upstairs and I made looked at some of my notes from '93, right? And of course, you recognize with the operations research, and part of their strategies to break up our families. So they've been working on that desperately since 1960, right? So
Right.
we already know that for the most part, most of our families are broken. Even though we do our little survival things, most of our families are broken.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they start promoting or glorifying negative things targeting our communities, whether it's promoting promiscuous activities, pitting or doing things to promote men disrespecting women. And then when they made those agreements with those different moguls in the rap music in order to do the gangster rap,
Mm-hmm.
while we know that certain people were making investment in the private prisons.
Right.
We know about that.
Right.
Right.
We know.
Although a lot of people don't talk about it, we know that that's operations research. Those who know that's operations research. So we know it's connected directly to, pardon me, what the average person calls, quote unquote, the government. But it's done through corporate entities that the people assume is not part of the government.
Absolutely.
No, now that's the thought process, right?
Val, just before you go any
Good.
further, Val and I had breakfast today, and we had a Val's my assistant, works with me. Shout out to Val. We had breakfast, and it was interesting that I sat at the diner, and I gave her a brief overview of like a nutshell of what I've learned from you, say in the past 12 years or so. And some of the things, like you just said, when we were talking about, I remember the scripture, and I always go to scripture, y'all, because I'm not preaching them, just I now see the relevance of it in everyday life.
Yeah.
When there's a scripture that say the Lord, well, or at least whether it's a scripture, folks say it, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Because we were talking about, she was talking about the things that are the stores that are closing, the this, and I said, listen, I said, remember the Lord they're the lords of the land.
Yes.
And as the lords of the land, I said, they have put within their landscape the things that would make us comfy and cozy and be dependent until
war. Should we now look what? All right, stay with that thought.
Okay,
because I want stay with that thought. Hold it. Remember what you always would interject to remind us to keep our head straight. The Pavlovian interjection of animal husbandry training,
right?
But it's done with dogs and animals first and then turned on us.
So what makes us salivate?
Yes.
What makes us desirous of a certain thing after a pattern of, take They're
of
back,
gluttony, a pattern of gluttony.
and then you can't live without it.
It-
I said, so what I was telling her, I said, so the lords, if you will,
feudal law,
yeah.
Under what? Feudal law, they refer to themselves as landlords.
Landlords. That's what I said. The
Yeah.
lords of the land.
But I'm just
right. They do.
Yeah.
So the landlords or the lords of the land have given us certain, conveniences, as they call it, or things to get us all wrapped up. And now it is within their ability to take it away. Exactly. And so now they're selectively and take it away. And what you don't realize, like you said, you don't always see the connection between the quote unquote government and say a Sears or a Walmart
who are governing, yes.
or governing, and then like some department store chain and whatever. You think that, well, Mr. So-and-so Sears started that, but did who financed Mr. So-and-so?
Or who stole? Because remember, the original of that business was Asiatic.
You mean that model or that particular Sears? Sears in
Roebuck.
Okay.
It was stolen from Roebuck, who was Aboriginal.
Okay. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yes, there was a partnership.
Yeah, but
no, well, I'm just showing you.
So it was so they take it and then they take it over and then they
pattern continues
until such a time when they decide that it's no longer useful for them to have that particular thing, or if they want to.
Well, we need to really start recognizing that they plan things ahead of time.
Oh, of course.
And a lot of times we assume that they came to the conclusion relative to opportunity to become corrupt, when actually
they started out as being corrupt
from the beginning. And it is not unlike the reality, the uncomfortable reality, Dr. G, where they constantly pepper the people's mind with America, America, American, American, American. And when they're talking about government operations, they'll say America, 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 America. And the average people every day are groomed to think they're talking about a country.
Right.
And they're really transferring the inconsistencies that are projected on the people and the land and things done in the name of the people of the land, but in actuality,
it's
really applied to the corporate operatives doing civil jurisdiction on the land via the corporate entity, who are really extracting from the land and using the energies of the people of the land to also attack others to do the same.
Absolutely.
So that when you have the natural pushback, subconscious pushback of who's doing these things to us over here in the island, us in Belize, us in Haiti, us in Puerto Rico, and you see all the extractions, and then you see the divisions among the people. Just as an example, what is commonly operative here, and this is schism out, right? We're in Haiti, right? As an example, right? And in Jamaica, right? U.S. corporate shippers, corporations fish off of Jamaica and Haiti, Puerto Rico, and they literally take the ship, the fish, ship them to Florida, and then send them back to the islands and triple the cost. No, this is a common practice. But how many people know that, and it doesn't dawn on them that that's a military operation? And yet over the decades, and this is why, like, say, for instance, you can go, say, if you go to Jamaica, etc., right, and you're a tourist, and the many of the people of the islands can't afford their own food in some of the tourist areas, and that fish came right from the area. So they fish it there, send it to Florida, and send it back, and triple the cost to the very people. Now, this is in line with what you're saying, and even what we were talking about, the other day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Things, these old notes. Things to know about Bitcoin and digital currencies, the CBDCs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their operations, right? One, these are things to remember. Their digital currencies, right, are not money, but are legalized as money substitutes. That's a legal way of saying counterfeit, but basically that's now, hold on, this is the other point. Digital currencies are tractable by the operators. That means those who create it, or the bank operators, right? And the digital currencies are all mutable. So this means that the same way, like you talked to me earlier, right? And you already know that this site is not monetized, right? Because we're pretty much blunt, right? And so people try to help us out by sending donations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got here, you told me an issue disappointing, but didn't surprise me, right?
Yeah.
And you had calls. So people are sending donations to the House of Reawakening Minds in order to help the station, because you already know much of the operations you take out your pocket to make, including, the platform, right? And they're blocking that. So you already know we probably kind of upset them with what we've been talking about the last few times.
Yeah, we probably at the end of this broadcast and not now, I'm probably going to call out a list of if some folks that made donations. See, there they are,
and we appreciate you all.
But they took it; they wouldn't send it to us, and you see them all with the not crossed out, and we don't want you to think it's something that we rejected, because we certainly wouldn't, but. So we now only just have the PayPal or
the same way they do, but the same way they unsubscribe people, mm-hmm. Same system.
Yeah.
Now that's the mutable, because remember, one of the keys, like we've been telling people why they're going to force CBDCs. Now, see, because it's mutable, so that means the same way they've been controlling people through inflations, they can immediately shut things down.
Yes.
And so that they can reduce opposition. Now, when you look at operations research, of course, that's clear their intention. And then when you start going into operations research, right, and the schism ops, and you start talking about it publicly, it didn't surprise me, but at the same time, it struck my mind how quickly that happened right after we did our last session.
Yeah.
And then you have a list of people who are making donations, and they wouldn't even accept it through the established system.
No.
So that's their attack on you. But it don't surprise me. But it's disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing, things that you're trying to do, things that we're trying to do, the pressures that you're under with your outlays, right? And so one of the reasons, again, when I came upstairs, because I was thinking about it earlier, but as soon as you told me that, so in my mind, I'm thinking, because you already know I think chess, right? All right. What can I do to counter the counter of the operatives having our limited resources? And that is what? To inform people in areas where the people can actually intelligently fight back and help themselves lawfully, standing on principle. right? So the thought came, this is another reason I had you read that poem, right? Apropos to the moment. And I wanted to introduce a few other things that might help, right? That can help. And this, because they're going to need it anyway. Because you already know now, for those of you, because I already know this is happening to a lot of you, right? Now, if you're in any organized body, right? Like, for instance, any church bodies, you know, where people who are usually coming together in the church, mosques, synagogues, or your other civic groups, etc. And the people, because of the pressures that are being put on them, right? What can they do to help in their communities? So I'm going to give you some information to redirect your energies that can help you no matter what organizations you belong to and what little groups that you come together trying to figure out how can you help, right? So I had you read that, but I want to come into this, and I'll give you some points that I want you to look at, because we're not going to get into this as a subject matter, but it is anti-schismata. So I want you to understand. So I'm telling you already, this is a counter schism presentation, right? Now, remember, by the people being in different organizations, their concepts are that their interests are different, right? So we're trying to bring them some common ground, all right? I want to now, one of the things that was brought to my attention, Dr. G, because as a matter of fact, when I was on the way down here, and I told you about what happened in the Olympics, and I was really, really upset about that, you know. And brought to my also when I looked at one of the chats, and someone had made reference to some things that we had mentioned, but of course we didn't get into. So I want to share with people this also. Now, just read that section right there, and I'll have you do it.
The United States Republic versus the U.S. democracy.
Yes.
The distinction between the United States Republic and the contemporary U.S. democracy is this. The United States Republic is that organic and legitimate political body politic founded by the authority of the natural people through and by the Constitution. The United States Republic is the de jure government. The U.S. democracy is that contrary and rights-subverting political body politic which evolved covertly into power by such aligned politicians who were slave-holding sympathizers and anti-constitutionalists. The U.S. democracy is a de facto corruption-oriented political person who organized to subvert the freedoms of the natural people and who sell and transfer the jurisdiction/authorities of the seats of government to private and foreign law corporate interests who collude to fund their campaigns.
Now, that's where your CBDCs are coming from right now today. Comes from that. I just wanted to point that out to you.
Okay.
Go ahead. And it will come from them. So they're, as the people are waking up, that's their tool to clamp down on the people, since nations are starting to dump, as we've been saying for the last few years, the U.S. Treasury bonds. Now, as many of you already know, the U.S. Treasury bonds were started mainly in 1862. And this is why you will see a lot of the House of Representatives documentation. When you do the research, you start finding certain blank pages because they don't want you to really know that those bonds were actually made on the Aboriginal people, mainly the Aboriginal people here, i.e. the Americans, etc., to fund their operations. In other words, they bureaucratize what you know as servitude into the monetary system. And that's what the U.S. Treasury bonds have their origin. This is why when you start doing research down Carpenter's Hall and stuff like that in Philadelphia, you start seeing them blank pages. Just as a reminder. So that gives you all something to work on, those of you who are researchers. Now, also, I want to remind you so that you all, when you all come together, and particularly in all of the platforms where the people are working hard, who are discovering that they are the Aboriginal and Indigenous people of the land, we give you something to work with, right? This is what for you to work with. Now, I want you to do research on all of the senators who were in office with the 61st Congress. Keep that in mind, the 61st Congress, right? And then individually, you can do further research when you find their names. I was going to give you a list, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on that right now. I'm just giving you some directives. It's not subject matter right now. Give you something to work with. Now, I want to also give you some references that you can help your families. And then if any of you have people among you who are doing any battling with quote unquote state tax, mortgages, stuff like that, and because remember, as you see them closing down the different businesses now, Dr. G, a lot of people, like we've been telling them for the last few months, are going to be suddenly out of a JOB. This is because we already know that they're accelerating the operations research. So we know the schism ops are being accelerated because of pressures that are being put on them by nations dumping U.S. Treasury bonds. Now, so when you know this, you already know there's a cause and effect. So let's try to help the people.
Okay.
So we want you all to do research on the Corporation Excise Tax Act of 1909. Are we clear? Now, the excise law is a law imposing excise duties upon specified commodities. Commodities is important. We're not going to expand on that, but you're going to find it's important when you start researching it. Providing for the collection of revenues therefrom. An excise tax is an inland impost, quote unquote, inland impost on articles of manufacture or sale, and also upon, quote unquote, licenses to pursue certain trades or to deal in certain commodities. Please pay attention to what I'm saying to you, because I'm not going to go into this in depth, but I'm giving you a strong defense weapon right now, and you're going to need it. You needed it before, but you're really going to need it. What's still going on right now, which we're not going to go into. But I'm telling you already, you need it. An excise is also a statute imposing duties or requiring payment of license fees for operating motor vehicles for hire on the state highways. Now, let me make this interjection while I'm speaking at this time. Because of what's happening in the economic platforms, many of you may not know, I'm going to tell you this already. Look up what's happening with Uber. That business for Uber, many of you catch Uber and stuff like that. Now, keep in mind, as an interjection, Uber has been trying to make a deal with Tesla to produce cheaper electric automobiles so that the common people can travel or get things done cheaper, knowing already that the corporate state governors with their governor meetings were going to increase registration costs on common people, and with their operations around the world, that oil costs would go up, and many people with everyday jobs would no longer be able to afford their ordinary cars and car insurances and registrations, knowing already ahead of time that a lot of people with regular jobs like McDonald's and stuff like that, little nursing jobs or little things that people do on a normal basis, would not in the near future will not be able to afford to maintain and run their cars. So Uber was, for the last couple of years, have been trying to make a deal with Elon Musk to create or to produce some cheaper electric cars available to the people, also knowing that with the CBDCs introduced, they're also putting that same technology in the cars so they could shut people down. All right. Now, for whatever reasons, which I will not go into, they weren't cooperating for whatever reason, and that deal didn't go through. So the operators of Uber made a deal with the Chinese, and it went right through. So look for things to be happening in your near future with Uber. But I'm just telling you that so when the politicians spin it a different way, you already know what really happened. So apparently the politicians did not want that to happen for the common people. That's what it's become clear. So China stepped in and made the deal just like that with Uber. Now, so I'm going to give you some pages to look up the excise tax issue, and I want you to be aware of these things from the Corporate Tax Act of 1909 so that you don't come subject to the schism because they're going to be putting people against each other, because within these coming weeks, a lot of things will radically change, particularly around automobiles, because many of the average everyday working people who are going to lose their jobs are in that venue. And people who seek to make claims, unemployment and stuff like that, and then they're going to start taxing that. But look at this so that you'll understand these things. The tax, which is the excise tax, right, which was under consideration by law, may be described as an excise upon the particular privilege of doing business in a corporate capacity. Keep that in mind. That's very important. With the advantages which arise from corporate or quasi-corporate organization. The requirement to pay, i.e., excise taxes or such taxes related to that, includes the exercise of privileges. Are we clear? Now, this is important now that we've set that up for you. This is now, These are things that you're going to research in support of what I'm presenting to you to counter the introduced schism ops and those which will be projected among the people to create confusion, to get them arguing with each other and their businesses, etc., of things that they're doing right now that will affect you in these coming weeks. I want you to look up the pages or the congressional records of the Senate of 1909 as follows. June the 16th, 1909, right? So that's the Senate. So it's page 3344. June the 17th, 1909, 3377. June the 28th, 1909, page 3900. June the 29th, 1909, pages 3935 and 3936. June the 30th, 1909, page 3976. June the 2nd, 1909, page 4043.
That was July.
Because remember, these things that I'm telling you, I know that they're going to troll and attack me. However, this will give you some point of research for yourself because you're going to need it in these coming weeks. Telling you already. I can't go into why I know that you're going to need it, but no, don't take my word for it. Do the research and trust me on that. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of more things that I want you to take in consideration. Excise taxes, and this is very important to understand. Let's make this very clear on the surface. I want you to really absorb what I'm getting ready to say. Income taxes do not apply. I'm repeating. Income taxes, which is an excise tax, does not apply to the living man and woman relative to their pecuniary compensations for work or labor. Are we clear? Make sure that you understand what I just now said. Because I'm giving you grounds to come together and make a class action suit if necessary. Are we clear? And don't expect the average everyday lawyer to go along with it, or because they're going to play dumb because they've been a part of this game, because they've been part of the setup that's been robbing you for decades. Let me give you an example or something to think about. How many of you have been working and have paid income tax your working life and calculate or generalize how much they've taken from you your whole working life, then add up to your brothers, your sisters, your mothers, your fathers, your uncles, your nieces and nephews, and their work, and the income taxes that's been taken from them, then apply it by your neighborhood, then multiply it by your communities, then multiply it by the city and boroughs that you've lived in, then multiply it by the years back to 1909 up to the day. And it's incalculable how much they robbed targeted communities just with income tax alone. Then think how many of you are in debt now with student loans, who are behind in mortgage payments and are finding it difficult to afford rent, living, payments on your cars. Many of you are losing your cars now. We told you it was going to happen. We know what's happening right now. But this is to give you something to fight back with. Individually, it'll be difficult, but if you come together with thinkers, you can do a class action suit. And I'm giving you stare decisis law So you don't have to worry about long years of litigation because the law is already established. Are we clear? Any details, we send it to you later, but these are grounds. All right, because a lot of you, I already know that a lot of you are going to need this information. Now, excises are taxes laid upon the manufacture or sale or the consumption of commodities within the country upon licenses to pursue certain occupations and upon quote unquote corporate privileges. It's very important that you pay attention to what I'm saying. Please. Don't hesitate to later on going back over this shared video, and please take notes, because remember, because of your training during your work life, you've been trained within the venue of excise, not knowing it never applied to you. Are we clear? They do not apply to quote unquote pecuniary compensations. So what was given to you in the voucher system relative to the fiats for your work is a set off pecuniary compensation, not taxable. Are we clear? And never to be taxed. Are we clear? So all so-called income taxes that were ever laid upon you for working is fraud. And they literally robbed you, and they knew they were doing it. The pecuniary compensation, which natural persons, that means these organic beings, not the corporate all-letter caps that they would put on the checks and stuff that they issued to you. The pecuniary compensations which natural persons derive from salaried employment, right? And that employment is a compromised statement. So we can deal with that later. Wages or occupations are conspicuously absent from the foregoing enumeration of proper subjects of excise taxes. Means it does not belong in that category. This is one of the reasons why I say to you, look up the Congress people and senators 1909 session to 1913 session, 1911, right? And you'll do the research on them. And I project, and you got to keep in mind what we told you before, the Democrats are cottonwigs, the Republicans are conscience wigs, and they conspired to rob the people when they discovered that they could not pilfer those positions, etc. So they deliberately misclassified the people as corporations, the living. Right. This is also dealing with the straw man issue. Are we clear? And so since then, in order to support their known among themselves misprision, this is why they started doing what you know today as quote unquote foreign aid, to disguise the raping of the people's labor and sending it outside of the jurisdiction, which is one of the motivations as to why they located the Internal Revenue operations at Puerto Rico and not on the mainland. We're talking political motivations. Are we clear? So remember, that's a protectorate, but not technically a constitutional state. That'll give you a little bit of insight what was happening in 1952 when they killed a lot of them Puerto Rican brothers who stormed the Congress. That's another study for you. Now, also remember this, the terms excise tax and privilege tax are synonymous, neither of which apply to the living man and women, just as a reminder. So I just wanted to interject that because that's part of their schism ops. Now look at this, Dr. J. Part of their schism ops is using the inflation operations to cover up the draining of the resources of the people to support their extortions. So with their foreign aid, they needed to start wars so they could send billions of quote unquote Federal Reserve notes leaned against the US dollar, and they'll say it's dollars, and send them to quote unquote mainly their colony known as Israel. And then they created artificial dual citizenship so that they could go there and extract the finances that they sent to themselves through their other dual citizen partnership. And this is why most of your senators and Congress people are wealthy within a year. They come from jobs that may project 175, 200,000, and within years they're not millionaires, multi-millionaires. Now, just as a question to you, for those who believe, quote unquote, that these people are your representatives, I'm not going to argue that with you. I'm not arguing that. How is it that your communities are falling apart, yet bi-monthly they've been sending multi-billions of dollars to Israel and other jurisdictions without your permission, and raise your taxes? Many of you have lost your houses because they've raised taxes. And then they have dual citizenship in Israel, and they've been funding both their war efforts, their militaries, their colonization, etc. And notice how when Netanyahu came to the Congress this past week, they all stood up and cheered. A cheering that you don't see them giving to their quote unquote own so-called speakers of the House and presidents, because that's who really runs them. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm not criticizing it. I'm just pointing things out to you. Pay attention, because they're crashing the economy. Now, also remember I told you they were selling the Chrysler building? Now, the same BYD that was making a deal with Uber with cheaper electric cars to try to help some of the poor people here that they blocked through Tesla. They blocked it. So expect them to be doing a lot of other things and spinning this, because apparently people are trying to help outside. But anyway, if you can interject some of these things, Dr. G.
Well, I can't interject on what you said, but just to add on to what you said, it popped up in something I posted a year ago, comes up on your story. Mm-hmm. And I had posted a song back then, and it got me to listening to it again, and I pulled it up. I can't play
Was
it.
it that one that you was playing
Yeah,
when we was in the car?
Yeah, I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
play the song, but I want y'all to look up. If some of you may be familiar with a group, sister that passed, she transitioned, I want to say around 2016 or something. Her name was Sharon Jones.
Yeah.
And she sang with a group called the Dap Kings. And I think it's in 2004. I looked up when this song was written. I want to share the lyrics to you. And I want us to, and I'm going to share the lyrics because I want us to look up this song and start blasting it. If you got Spotify, Amazon Music, and whatever, play it to yourself, play it to your kinfolk, your friends, and so just play it. And the name of the song that they put out in 2004 was called "What If We All Stop Paying Taxes?" And I want to just read the words. I love the song. I can't play it, you know, because of course we'd get flagged. But look it up. "What If We All Stop Paying Taxes" by Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings. And it says, "I was talking to a friend of mine, said he don't want no more wars, no more. They're building bombs while our schools are falling. Tell them what in the hell we paying taxes for." And the chorus says, "Well, what if we all stop paying taxes? Now, what if we all stop paying taxes? Stop paying taxes, y'all. Now tell me," verse 2, "who's going to buy their bonds, their tanks, their planes, and all their guns? Well, tell me who's going to pay for their wars if we all get together and cut their funds?" Yes, listen, people, listen to what I've got to say. Now, what if we all stop paying taxes? I said, now, what if we all stop paying taxes? We stop paying taxes, y'all. Well, what if we all stop paying taxes? I said, now, what if we all stop paying taxes? We stop paying taxes, y'all. And then it goes in, "There's something on my mind, yeah, and I think I've got to let it out. They can't take nothing from us. They ain't ready to give, that we ain't ready to give. Well, now, how can we talk about the price of gas when they're stealing our brothers and sisters' right to live?" Okay. Now, what if we all stop paying taxes? I said, now, what if we all stop paying taxes? We stop paying taxes, y'all. Well, what if we all stop paying taxes? I said, now, what if we all, I almost want to sing it, stop paying taxes? We stop paying taxes, y'all. And then there's a spoken interlude where it said, "That's right, ladies and gentlemen, children of America. It's up to you. Let Mr. Politician know how you feel. Let him know that you're not going to take no more. Stop paying taxes. Stop paying taxes for corruption and injustice. It's up to you." Now, what if we all stop paying taxes? Hey, now, what if we all stop paying taxes? We stop paying taxes, y'all.
Now, let's talk about how. See, because this is the how, Dr. G. And this is another reason why, there's another reason why I'm sharing this information, you know, so people, it's sort of like arbitrary.
It's voluntary for one thing. Most of it is.
Now, this is very important. Hold on, because this is very important.
Yeah, look that up, play it, blast it. So like, what do you mean? How can people will say, how can we stop? Because you know how they said there's nothing true but death and taxes. Neither one of that is true. Yeah. Both of that's a lie. We don't die. We don't die, and taxes aren't necessary.
But that's part of the training. Even that statement
is a lie.
You know, to get us to keep saying it. See, because that's casting a spell. It's really a psychic attack, right?
Right.
And we take it on because we take it as what you call a maxim truth.
Yeah.
You know, like people keep saying it, and you hear people saying that casually. But what it does, it imprints on the brain, right? Now, look at this. Now, remember when we talked about the incorporate papers, right? Last time, right? Now, and the incorporate papers of 1925, right? So now let's look at, when you're looking at the Supreme Court cases, because remember, they were going into what you call transitory operations, bringing in the U.S. democracy that you just talked about. See, because they've done it step by step, right? So for those of you who do research, look up the Sims versus Athens case, 221 SW of 720. That's 1925, right? So look at this, because remember when we were talking, I was saying 4.5 to 5 years, because what I was really making reference when we talked the last time is not 1933, but 1929. See, with the 1920, that's when the reality of the crash, You see what I'm saying? Now, when they make it public, it's 33, but the action really 29 and 30. You see? Now,
Just
pay
like
attention.
2008.
Exactly. What they're experiencing right now.
Yeah.
Right? The Supreme Court decisions apparently settled the law as definitely as the repeated decisions of the same question can settle anything, in that listen, you all, the state cannot tax for revenue purposes. I'm repeating, the state cannot tax for revenue purposes occupations which are of common right. Now, how many of you sisters have been forced to get licenses to do hair?
To do hair, yeah.
Did you know that that's unlawful? Did you know that you can sue the politicians for having done that to you? Did you know many of these beauty salons and stuff that have closed down because of all them regulations, that those regulations was unlawful? Now we're talking stare decisis, Supreme Court. So I'm just giving you something to work with if you're all willing to fight back. You willing to complain? Are you willing to take a stand on your own behalf? Because I'm giving you stare decisis. Keep in mind, stare decisis is established law. So if y'all want to get together and talk about stuff, how about talking about stuff restabilizing your families that are being destabilized deliberately by people you thought was your government? Now, the decision that was made by Supreme Court involves the 16th Amendment. That gives you some root that y'all can build some classes on and start studying among yourselves so that you can get your head clear. However, and I'm going to repeat what I said earlier, with your organized church groups of people coming together, because we have a tradition of coming together in the church, mosques, and synagogues, and we talk about a lot of things about the neighborhood. And I want to tell you this too. This is why a lot of the corporations would give their leftover food or food and stuff that they would throw away and would give it to churches and stuff like that, so they could do what you call benefits in the community. This is actually to buy votes and actually to kind of make you think that they're doing you some good, when the real deal was that stuff they was going to throw away anyway. And so that you would never think about countering them, not knowing that they would get write-offs, and then they'd turn around and tax the people that were going to their JOBs and were being taxed in the first place to take on the burdens of the tax that only belong to the corporate entities and not to you in the first place. So I'm letting you know that. So if you all want to get together and start having meetings, you need to change your conversations about the things that you're talking about and start really helping the people in your communities by suing these local state politicians who have been putting income tax on you that never applied to you. And the Supreme Court said it didn't. And why have they been charging you income tax and telling you you had income knowing that you never did? So don't think that they made a mistake. They didn't make a mistake. And again, Dr. G, I want to bring that date up to you, because the motivation of them doing that reincorporation is because they couldn't do it. So they had to figure out a way to reincorporate themselves, because without being able to rob the people's labors, they couldn't maintain their parties. And so they applied the excise tax to people's pecuniary wages and started training the people that their pecuniary compensation was income, and it isn't and wasn't, and they know it isn't, and they know it isn't and wasn't. And so they've been knowingly applying income taxes to people's labor wages and calling it income and training you to call it income so that you wouldn't refute it. And by that training, you would start filing income taxes, and it never applied to you. Only applied to foreign corporations on imposts and duties.
Well, I'm reading this from the Vortex, and it says the nature of income. The law defines income to include, quote unquote, gains, profits, and income derived from salaries, wages, or compensation for personal services. And then they got some dots, or from professions, vocations, businesses, trade, commerce, or sales, or dealings in property. Also from interest, rent, dividends, securities, or the transaction of any business carried on for gain or profit, or gains or profit, and income derived from any source whatsoever. But then it later on says that if someone works for as a what is it? I guess like a city worker, county worker,
to
blah,
the
blah, blah,
corporation.
blah, 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 blah.
Not, that's why they would say to you, are you an employee? Because that's dealing with government employees, not to the average everyday man or woman.
So it excludes city, county workers, but it doesn't. But it includes federal.
Exactly.
It's you see it here.
See, but you know that most people don't know that.
Yeah, and anything else we do is no different than when you go and get a dead pledge. And you think you're making mortgage payments and you're making gifts, donuts.
That's why they call it the donuts.
They already went into the Socio-GeoPolitical trust account that's assigned to you and took out the $200,000 you thought you borrowed. They took, and now they're double booking. And yours is your gift. Versus
what has created the problem one of the problems that they're dealing with right now?
What?
They've compounded about 20 times. And then created bonds on it. Right. And so this way they've been doing all of these corporate activities actually on the average day, everyday people. And they be thinking that these multi-billionaire guys that all of a sudden grow up are generating this finance, when it's really they're stealing from the average everyday person who most of their life has just experienced poverty or trying to make a living and being taxed on that. And when they spend it again, taxed again.
And so since taxation is for the majority of us is voluntary, they're not going to tell you, because most of us don't read the fine print. You fill out that form at your job, and they tell you got to every year do the.
Now, look
but
what
the interesting thing is, I remember when I was employed, that they would give you an option, like every year or so, maybe we might get a bonus. And so everybody knew that bonus, just before that bonus came in, to go down and get the W-4, I guess it is, fill it out, change it to zero exempt, like you have, to the maximum exemptions, so that you could get all your funds. Some people forgot to change it back, but you had that option of you could, the only way you could get yourself out of it seemed like, was by overstating exemptions when you didn't have to do it from the get-go.
Now, the reason why they told you that, see, because if for whatever reason in the future they had any what you call issue with you, they could bring that up and then charge you with fraud.
Yeah, well,
and then you out of clear blue sky, you get audited when you're not being cooperative, and it doesn't have this selective prosecution. That's how they do it. Because see, the deal of it is, when it never applied to you, you shouldn't have to fill out a daggone thing, because it never applied to you in the first place. Because remember,
do you remember Teach sharing with us?
Yeah,
the fact that he was still employed where he was, and as a I guess an officer or policy enforcer, and when he got this knowledge. First, he got the knowledge from you, and then he kept researching, and he put it to the test and took it all the way to the top, because they kept saying you can't not pay.
And then he showed them the law. Say, this is the law.
Right.
that governs you.
And the interesting thing that he shared, if I say it correctly, was that you cannot say that you're trying to defraud them, but what you can say is that what I'm doing is I'm doing what I need to do to not have to pay you that.
Now write this down. Write
Right?
this down
Am I
so
correct?
so you don't forget this. When they say voluntary, right? Put next to it, quote unquote, free will, because that's what it means. Now tell me, by free will, have you been paying them income tax?
Yeah.
Or have they been arbitrarily taking it out of your compensation?
Yeah.
Does that sound anything like free will? So we're giving you tools that you all can come together with and do class action suits against so-called government employees who've been taxing you, and also corporate entities who, after they've used you up, want to dump you off the jobs and everything because they're maximizing their stock options and you're no longer useful, and they're going to destroy many families. Y'all can get back at them by doing class action suit on the income taxes that they've stolen from you. Because remember what they're doing right now, they're going to bankrupt a lot of families. And the first ones they bankrupt is the common people, what you call everyday workers. I'm just giving you something to work with, just in case you didn't know that. And do research on those things that I just told you, and that'll give you a solid background. Then get with people, I teach, who are showing you operative. Of course, y'all already know we've been telling people this for 30 years, so it's no different. But the deal of it is, I'm giving you something that the average everyday person can comprehend, and giving you reference.
Right.
And those pages I told you to go to, that give you pages in the Senate records.
So let's think in terms of what's going on contemporarily with our brothers and our sisters in other jurisdictions outside of the U.S. corporate, if you will, oversight.
Yeah.
The ones that are saying, we're not taking this anymore. I think the problem may be that we had not, until of recent years, and it could be the last 100 years maybe, but of recent years, realize that we're not just looking out over there at the unfortunate folks in other countries, in Haiti and different areas, and in the islands.
You're looking at yourself.
Right. We don't realize, it's like you're looking outside
and don't recognize that you're the one in the cage.
What do they say? It's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
We're looking out, thinking that everybody's got their point. Look at them, they're doing no bad over there. And look at them, and look at their banana republic. And look at them, and look at them, and it's you.
Yeah, we're in just as worse. We're in a worse state because
and don't even
to not know that you were in
the
prison,
state that you're
in the state that you're in, and to think that you're free. Just as again, back
and never were and are not.
And back to my conversation today with Val. I was being philosophical, but I was saying, hey, Val, I said, listen, think in terms of the ant that you put in an aquarium.
Yeah,
and you can see the little cutout of the side because the way it is, the way they build. You see them working, toiling, doing their thing, but we don't know what's on the ant brain. The ant's like, I'm super ant. I'm this. I'm providing for my folks, my family. I'm doing the profession I love. All the time, don't know that they in an aquarium that we are now observing and controlling. And so I said, Val, just think, there's a microcosm, a macrocosm, and a microcosm. And we somewhere in that same, if you will, line, if you will.
This is the interesting thing,
and folks
Dr.
don't realize that.
This is the interesting thing, the reality. You're using that allegory, analogy, paradigm, metaphor, put it all together. And guess what? operations research, those things are actually applied politically.
Right.
They're actually meaning that you're making an analogy, and they actually use them as patterns.
I was thinking, like I said, we complain about being sprayed with chemtrails, but
Yes.
but maybe ants and roaches are complaining about rain and
Now,
and
when you're
and whatever we spray it down.
and when you're looking at this, Dr. J, and we're not getting into this right
I'm
now.
just being
No, what are you really talking? And this is the reality, because this is what how you say troubles them with these kind of conversations now.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we're doing, we're peeling the onion that ultimately will expose the exopolitics that you're talking about.
Okay.
Really. However, intelligence
Mm-hmm.
commands that in order to do a logistical breakdown, in order to bring remedy, we're talking about basic math,
mm-hmm.
even with quantum thinking, you must comprehend what's before you can comprehend that which is without you.
Mm-hmm.
Mean, know yourself, thus know the world. Like they say, or like you'll see sometimes they'll say, he who knows the math knows the universe. You'll hear statements like that.
No, but
it's predicated on comprehending that which is within to have a clearer comprehension of that which is without, which you come with the philosophy of man know thyself.
Mm-hmm.
Or even when people really get into what we call, but we already know they're books of customs and traditions, mispresented as religious books, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're not really to be dismissed, but put it in the culture that it comes from, right? It's a comprehension or an understanding of self. Whereas you do all this research without, when it all boils down, you're studying within. This is why they say to you, while you've been running around searching, trying to find God, those who really know has chilled out, set back, and recognized that God is within.
Right.
Now, it's not that hasn't been said, but have we really examined it, if you get the point? If you comprehend that reality and apply, that empowers you to deal with your environment more intelligently. Just an interjection.
Yeah. So, one of the things, how people always want to know the how. I've held this book up. This is not the be all end all, but this is one thing that would help to shed some light on some of the things that you share as far as the timelines, what's been done, and also some language, which I love about this, be the one to execute your trust.
Yes.
The reason why I like it is because there's so much in there that gives you things that you could literally put in your writs and your presentments that you need to know that you may not on your own.
Now, because remember, but look at this, Dr. J, because remember, a writ is simply an intelligent writing that any common man or woman can comprehend. Right. So the psychology that's projected, right, to the people is that a writ is some sophisticated thing that takes some law school training. No. The same way do you have a rational, intelligent conversation with a family member. If you put that down on paper, right? Mm-hmm. The same way you be talking it, and it's comprehensible, that's a writ. In law, just keep that in mind. This is so that people in political venues don't discourage you from speaking for yourself, making you think that only they can speak for you. And know that they've trained people that way, which is why people always end up volunteering to get some other man or woman to speak for them, thinking that they are not qualified to speak for themselves. A legitimate writ is you putting your common sense writing on the paper, because all writ means, what do you write down? Mm-hmm. Is it written? Yeah. That's why they say if it ain't written, it ain't That's why they say all really valid contracts should be put in written form so it can't be contested.
Right.
Well, I said this. Well, that's hearsay, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. All right. Go ahead.
No.
No, I'm talking in general how people talk, or how them same people in law that encourage people to come to them, or that they're satisfactory just by doing a disposition, a verbal disposition. They'll ask you for a deposition. Why? Because they want something in writing. Why? Because upon a challenge or counter or an adverse claim, it stands.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say something, well, you remember when I was talking to Freddie last week and you were there, and then they say, let's strike that. That's hearsay. You heard me. You was there too. Hearsay, and it has no standing. This is again why we tell people, take notes. Don't let them convince you that the standing in law is you just taking any digital position that can be disappeared and have standing upon a challenge, because it becomes hearsay. That's why another reason why they're training people for the CBDCs. Because what are they going to do? Because remember, they're mutable and they're tractable. So as soon as you become disagreeable to them, the same way they glitch this computer when we're trying to get on, in the same way they block the people we're trying to make donations knowing that you're under pressure, right? Is the same way they're going to block them CBDCs quicker than they're able to do right now with the inflation, with you having the records of the 3 steps back Federal Reserve notes locking you out of redemption for the gold that they've already stolen. So they need to train us to keep thinking or dealing with the instrumentalities as the money. And by us verbally saying it, we accept the obligation. And thus, because that's a corporate venue, an employee corporate venue, and they get you talking like that, that means that you're voluntary by your will to accept the excise tax of the corporations, and the corporate entities and operatives are doing what? Amassing billions, and then using them same billions to buy off the politicians that keep training you that your work, your pecuniary compensation is income, get you to agree to it, and then sign W-2s and saying that it is, which makes you a liar. However, it makes you liable at the same time. And then they take the finance and send it to Israel, and then having dual citizenship, go get their payoffs.
For those asking,
and they've been doing it for decades.
For those again asking about this book, it is called "Be the One to Execute Your Trust" by David Robinson. Mm-hmm. Be the One to Execute Your Trust by David Robinson. Get it on Amazon or someplace else. But we get back to, in this last half hour or so that we have left, again, even those things have been used to divide and conquer us, so
and that's schism
because we have different opinions. You might say you need to do this, and I'm like, but that's not what they say, because if we stop paying taxes, if we stop filing this, or we's gonna get in trouble, and then you be like, no, we can't do that. So now here we are at odds at each other.
This is why we've given you what? Stare decisis, to show you this is the law already. And the fact that they're not even telling you, because it's very clear that they're deliberately been going against it. Now, notice that the ones who've been exercising this law, right, Dr. G? Mm-hmm. Always happen to be the corporations. Mm-hmm. All those case laws are what? The corporations. Goodrich versus Edwards. They're corporations, right? Mm-hmm. They're protecting themselves, and the people aren't protecting themselves because they don't know that it applies to them.
Right.
So look. The Federal Appellate Court in American Airways, right? Versus Wallace. And so the corporations operatives and managers are using the law and they get wealthy. Why? That's why they don't have to pay taxes, because they're converting it to you.
Right.
And remember, the corporations aren't doing it. The politicians are doing it on behalf of the corporate entities. Then the politicians buy stock in the corporation, and that way they can steal from you, have a feedback loop, and it looks like the corporations are doing it when the politicians are doing it. They're hiding behind the corporations so that they have what? Always have an argument of denial. What you call plausible. Well, we're going to work on some legislation to stop the corporations. And the real deal is that they're creating colorable legislation to benefit the corporations by converting the excise tax that belongs only to the corporate entities on the everyday man and women's labor.
Right.
Now, and then look at this. Look how many, and this is the other deal, Dr. J. Look how many people, right, that in their mind have a reasonable income. Keep in mind, it don't apply to them. They're calling their compensation income, and it's so bad the politicians have been robbing them so deep that now people have to do what? 50 and 60 and 7-year loans on a car. To now, as soon as they get a car, they're underwater. They can't even so-called, because they're not buying, so-called buy a car and can't take it back within the next year and get a buyback of that same car that these car deals can go to an auction and get it for half of what you just paid for it, and you're in a hole 3/4 of the payment. This is another reason why a lot of the people who own corporations, they don't buy cars, they rent them and then write them off. Why? Because they already know it's a dead horse. I'm just telling you some things that you can use to start helping, and you're going to need it because remember, because now that they've drained the people, meaning quote unquote, what's happening right now? The people have run out of savings and they've run out of fiat. And 90% of the people are now not what they call living from paycheck to paycheck. They're living off of credit cards. And now they're doing what? Contracting the credit cards because they're what you would call accelerating the operations research schism operations. So now when you said you were having a conversation with Val, how they're closing all these businesses.
Yeah.
Right? Now notice a few years, we knew this because we've talked about this for years. All right. So notice how all of a sudden a lot of these corporate so-called businesses are closing blocks of stores and they're not making them as public as they were before. People are discovering that they're closed.
Yeah.
Why? Because they already know that, remember I've been telling you for the last few years that the teachers' retirement funds
is gone, right?
It's gone, right? Now, so many of you pay attention. Most of the hedge fund managers have taken the teachers' retirement funds and they have invested them in many of these corporate buildings, like in San Francisco and different areas. Meanwhile, for themselves, to save themselves, because many of them have stock in them, they're trying to sell these buildings as much as 50 to 80% off, and no one's buying them. The problem that they're having, because I'm showing you how things, what you call the domino effect. because nations are dumping U.S. treasuries. Now, keep in mind, I think either today or the other day. Now, when Trump started that trade war with China and the Manchurian families, when the Manchurian families started demanding proper trade, remember Trump putting tariff on Huawei, China, the chips.
I know.
All right. Now, last couple of days, China dumped about 40 or some, y'all can do the research, a high percentage of U.S. Treasury bonds. So you already know, because many of these corporations actually get their products from China and have put their own names on them, giving the perception that a lot of things that they have taken credit for actually was done with cheap labor from China. But because they've been consistently attacking China and putting tariffs on China, China has stopped exports and imports. So that means a lot of people here are going to lose their jobs within weeks of our conversation. Not next year, within weeks. So you need to use some of this information that we've given to you. Be prepared to get together with people of reasonable minds that's not going to get you caught up in emotional conversations about other things, and start suing, quote unquote, city and local governments who have been knowingly robbing you against stare decisis law, and what you've been thinking was so-called foreign aid that these politicians have been sending finance, your energy overseas to other so-called foreign aid, and you already know the main place they've been sending it. And then they have dual citizenship, and then they have offshore accounts, and they've been doing this for years. Now, back to the issue with Trump. So that when you deal with the executive order from Trump, they mostly talk about child trafficking and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it also includes what? Offshore accounts. So if they really enforced it, you'd have 90% of all politicians would automatically be going to jail. Remember when they was having that debate and Hillary was saying something to Trump about if he was in office and he was a criminal and stuff, and he says, if I was, you'd be in jail. That's what he's talking about.
Right.
When you look back and you see certain things that were said, they're actually things that were in the works. So again, I chose to pick up some of these things because I wanted to make sure that you all had some things to work with, because you already know that we can't go through all of this in these sessions. So I've given you reference that you can go look up, and when you start paying attention to what I said to you, you're going to get very, very, very angry. Now, this is the qualification. Don't get angry. Get even. In other words, you've been paying taxes to your own demise and the destruction of your own families and didn't know it. Because you didn't know that these people that you thought was government were actually warring on you all the time, knowingly. Not that, oh, they didn't understand, oh, and it's because there was a certain party and they was arguing with the other party and they didn't notice that the mother with the 2 children and no husband was being thrown out of her apartment in Georgia because of some regulation in the city, and they're going to be working on trying to make sure they have some rent control. All this stuff was planned.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on.
In other words, we're giving you something to go after them with. they're going to sacrifice you anyway, so at least fight back. You know what I'm saying? If, you know, like I say, a bully punch you in the nose and then take your lunch too. Well, if they punch you in the nose, take your lunch, if you at least punch them in the lip, they won't enjoy the sandwich so much with a swollen lip. Because remember, the things that I've just presented to you are all stare decisis. Just remember that. Please write that down. You need to redirect your energy in things that you've been doing in order to protect yourself and your families. Because the people you've been trusting have actually been warring on you, not going to. They've been doing it. The whole time that you've been going to school into your whole work cycle. You just didn't suspect it. And I know it's hard for some people to accept that, but what I've given you is the documented proof. So don't get mad, get even. Because remember, as these people lose their JOBs, you know, most people aren't prepared to stay, you know, because they're going to be destabilized. They're destabilized anyway, but they're going to be really destabilized so that you don't, you know, get crazy, chill out, study, come together with other thinking people and go at them, because they're going to throw you out of the job anyway. And just like they got BYD, they've been going through the Chrysler building. You know why? Because they're selling Chrysler and Dodge. To China. Why? Because they have been the biggest holders of U.S. debt, and they're dumping them treasuries. So they're firing people and selling off them buildings that they can't do anything with.
But you know what I've noticed, at least here where we are, that they're building a lot of over the last couple of years, large warehouse type, large facilities, and it makes one wonder
with
what
limited windows.
Yeah, what is that about?
You know what it is.
I mean, yeah, I'm like,
what?
Why are they building all these new
operations research, y'all?
Yeah,
I'm just telling you.
What's that about?
It's about reducing the population. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Oh, and a reminder, Dr. G, you know what I was telling you earlier? I was so angry on the way.
Right.
You know, anyway. So you have in the Olympics, because I'm showing you how they're dealing with both psychic attacks and molding the public for capitulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Women who've been training, you know, for years, you know, home and her little organized groups and stuff like that as a boxer. And she's looking forward to participating and trying to win a medal in the Olympics, you know, just like a lot of athletes do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they put her in the ring with a girl, boy, man, woman thing.
Okay.
He smashes her face within 46 seconds and breaks her nose, literally ruining her career. First round. I was so mad. And I'm not going to dwell on it. But when I saw it, I'm looking at operations research, Schism ops.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a lot.
And that's gender bending operations, which is a military operations for attack on humanity. Got not a damn thing to do with women's rights. It's an attack.
Wow.
I was so mad. I'm still angry. I mean, because I recognize as soon soon I got, you know, because I on the way down, when I got that, someone sent me that note and I looked at it, and then they start taking all the videos down because they don't want people to see it.
Yeah. I do want to say this though, with regard to all that's being presented before us. I'm not going to say it's really going on. Some is going on and some is being presented as going on.
Yeah.
It is in my humble opinion, it is important for us to remain focused in our own mind. I'm getting, into my metaphysical stuff, and not be distracted. Or persuaded by the things that you're being shown, things that you hear, the things that you might, just offhandedly see and not necessarily, weren't doing it on purpose to get there. But these things that come, that when they confused the hell out of me when they talked about mindfulness, because I'm always thinking that mindfulness means your mind is full of stuff. But when they talk about mindfulness in reality, Grand Sheik, they're talking about, okay, it comes in, it's observed, but it's not interacted with, and it's allowed to attach to you to go. And we grab, our minds are like it, so it doesn't. To me, mindful means I thought grabbing it all, but a full mind means that you are so full of knowledge of who you are and what your potential is or what you desire, that those other things have no room to take root or take take up space.
There was another way of putting that is like Drali used to always say, don't let them put their spirit on you.
Right. So
that's, metaphysically, don't let them put their spirit on you.
While we hear and see these things, there must be a strength within to observe it, to become the observer, but not the participant.
Not let it become a part
and
of
not
you.
The participant. No, exactly. that is not what.
Not to entertain it.
Don't entertain it. And even there's even scriptural backgrounds to talk about that, about what you allow in. And we can't entertain that craziness and foolishness, because they are, to me, the high place. The wickedness in high places is them.
They're doing psychic attacks.
Right. So they are the wickedness in high places.
Yes.
And so, but we are higher than their wickedness. It's just, except that we've been convinced that we're low. We've been convinced that we're powerless.
Psychic attack is to convince, in other words, to create what you call subtle interjections of trauma and depression and hopelessness and weakness on the people, so that they can be more effective with their political psychic attacks, their misrepresentations, and their de facto operations. All of that is collectively done systematically through the political platforms, through operations research, schism operations. Keep that in mind. What they have think tanks that actually lay these ops out. They're not just things that they're thinking of at the moment, and they just happen to arrive.
Planned out over.
They're planned out. Time. They call them score blocks. So they like, for instance, like with their think tanks, they'll take 10 and 20-year cycles, and they call them score blocks, and they plan things and package them. They will sometimes go back and review them, but basically they'll come to determinations, and no different than they take a canister off a shelf of planned operations and open them up. It's kind of like that. And so the political operations with governing humans is done in score blocks. So keep that in mind. So if something is taking place right now, even in what you would call gentrification in certain communities, it's not spared a moment when you discover it. 9 times out of it may and more often is done or laid out even before the people that you see operating so-called council women and council men's positions, before they're even in office. They're just given the playbook to go along with certain things, and at the same time told to present certain things to their so-called constituency to guide you along the line to prepare for things that are already in place anyway. and then feel justifications to tax you to pay for it against yourself. Operations research, schism ops.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that we don't want to leave you in a state of gloom and doom. It's not that.
We just give me some
give me
truths.
these
In other words, take your energy and like that song you just said, Doc.
What if
you
we
remember
all,
when I got in the car, I said, oh, you know, and you had to tell AI to play the song
right?
Again. And it's interesting how it all tied in to really what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tell people don't pay taxes. You know that's going to trigger a lot of people, but they don't know it don't apply to them in the first place. So we're giving you the stare decisis to prove to you that it doesn't. So be confident and stand on principle. Like Drew Ali said, enforce the Constitution. That's simple. It's complex. No, it's that simple.
Right. So, but here, yeah, I was going to Grand Sheik, and I was going to read folks' names, but the short end of way to say this is that anyone who sent anything, whether it was for a donation or a flash drive, since July 3rd, we did not get it. You probably see that where it was declined. So we did not get it. If you still want to do that, of course, we can.
We got to find new routes because
we have
us.
PayPal, or we have to get some other
well,
stuff
say that
going.
And post it, please.
It's there. It's right there. But we also have Zelle. But you can also text us at the 302-345-0500 and say donation or what, and can send you the donation link we have through PayPal. And, you'd always,
because they're blocking, and they've really been pissed off at us for these last couple sessions.
They not only took down the business one, they took my personal one, and so then I started a new one, and then they took that again. So I don't know whether it's a personal attack. So I mean, I've not broken any of their laws, but they just say I've broken community guidelines, which I don't know what that means.
What do we already know, Dr.
Absolutely. But again, we also encourage you to come out for our fourth Friday in-person classes. The next one's going to be on the 23rd of August.
Yes.
Here at not here, but down at the House of Reawakening Minds. And we also, even if you are a vendor and maybe want to come and bring your products and services, then we invite you to reach out to we're still working on getting our website things straightened out. So I'm not saying too much about that.
I'll talk to you later about cleaning your vents.
Right.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm letting you know.
Okay.
You had that work done?
Yeah, well, we're not going to talk about that on this. We're going to
No, I'm just reminding you.
Okay, cool. But we're just going to talk about stuff that relates to them. But we want you to come out. Also, anybody who's in this area, like in the tri-state area, and I didn't get to put it up actually, but on Sunday, we're having our first pop-up shop from 12 p.m. to 5 at House of Reawakening Minds. We have 4 vendors, one of which is yours truly, and we invite you all to come on, and one of them is an awesome chef who's going to be here, just good catering, and also has does the chickenless chicken with the oyster mushrooms that taste like so we're having but we have men and women and children's sportswear and jewelry and costume jewelry and all that stuff, and electronics and all that stuff. We already got it set up down there for Sunday. So if you're in the area and want to come Sunday 12 to 5, we'd love to have you come. And it's our very first event. We're going to try to do it once a month on the first Sunday and see how it goes, Grand Sheik. But it's another way of supporting the house. But we definitely want to see you at civics classes on the 4th Friday of each month until it gets real cold and crazy, and we would suspend them for a while. But Grand Sheik looks like he sees something that he wants to. Is something else you need to say before we go?
Yeah, I want to give them something to work with.
Okay, here we go.
In the nature.
Don't forget, play Black.
What's that song? What's that song? Say it again.
Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings. What if we all stop paying taxes? If you Google it or.
All right, so I'm giving something to roll with. This is helping you. no excise tax may be imposed upon a right secured by the Constitution. That's Grosjean versus American Press Company, 297 U.S. 233, that's 1836. Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, 319 U.S. 105, it's 1943. And this is another that you can get grounded in your comprehension of this shorted or piecemeal conversation that we've been having. The Federal Appellate Court in American Airlines versus Wallace, 57 F 2nd 877, etc. 6th Circuit, 1933. The term excise tax and privilege tax are synonymous. Keep that in mind. Excise tax and privilege tax are synonymous. Another case that will get you well grounded. Flint versus Stone Tracy Company, the Supreme Court defines, this is why you don't have to listen to us, Supreme Court, remember, stare decisis and res judicata, keep that in mind, right? Supreme Court defines the proper subjects from whence to extract or to exact excise taxes, etc. So that'll remove any doubt. So we're giving you some intellectual and law reference that you can use to protect yourself, and particularly as soon as y'all got laid off, because a lot of you going to get laid off. Don't go, how do you say, don't go home with your tail behind your back and all that other stuff and whimpering. Don't get mad, get even.
Yeah.
They want to mess with you, mess with them back.
I know we got to get this book. I know they're working on it, getting the reprint of that, because folks will probably want to get your book, Confused About Taxes.
Getting madder and madder every time I think about this stuff.
And well,
the amazing, just think, Dr. G, the amount of finance that they've just robbed every single man and woman, just singular. Imagine what they've done to your families all these years. And that's only a small part of the taxes.
Yeah,
it is accumulated in the trillions that they've literally, knowingly, and intentionally robbed people of, and people have been trained and they really thought they had income and been taxed on it.
We might as well just have a whole pile of monopoly money or some.
It's not even the fiat. It's not even the issue of the fiat, Dr. G.
Yeah, I was trying to see if I had it down here, but I had some. Yeah, we might as well. Yeah, like I said, we just been had. They've been. Yeah, they've been making. They just been printing out stuff and and
it's no different. Absolutely no different.
No. Yeah. So I mean, we could have been.
It's actually the same. And look at this, Dr. J. Right?
Yeah.
Right. At 10,000 new. Right.
Right.
How many people know that up to the 20s that these were in circulation for the average everyday people, and most people have never seen? They think this is a joke, and yet that was normal.
Yeah.
Pay attention to when they went to the hundreds, the 50s, and the 20s. And you're never seeing these ones. At 10,000, most people didn't even know they exist.
They exist there. They existed. Yeah. Well, anyway, we appreciate y'all. And thank you.
Love you all.
Love you, Sister Empress Light. To Jerry Bey, thank you for all the wisdom you provide in the chat.
Keep the good work up, sis.
Yep, we appreciate you and all those that are.
Stay strong.
Yeah. So, anywho, we going, and hope to see some of you all on the fourth Friday. I
Yeah.
actually hope to see some of y'all on Sunday.
Before.
Somebody gonna look. Somebody somewhere in
Come on.
the tri-state area
Tell
can
us a little about it. Come on.
come on Sunday.
Make sure you get that in.
Sunday from 12 noon, is free admission. Come and support the vendors, and that supports us. 12 to 5. Come on out, and also I'm going to be giving some giveaways away. I like to give away goods. Remember the time I gave away like $700, $700 no pillow,
$3,000
over $3,000
or more.
Yeah, in one event. So we never know what I'm going to give away, but you got to be here. You got to be there to win. So we thank you so much. We get ready to go and let you go.
Anyway.
Okay.
Islam. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom.
Shalom.
Vadimekum. Going aboard.
All righty, y'all. We going.
The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you know what's in store just for you.